A man stood on the train tracks, twirling his revolver. He punched the approaching train, shattering it instantly. This modified man with a revolver for a head is named Juzo. On the battlefield, he was a formidable killing machine. However, in peaceful times, he lived in poverty. To make a living, he opened an office. With no business, he wandered the streets and noticed a situation unfolding. A modified human had kidnapped a child, but the nun who lost the child seemed unconcerned. Juzo then returned to his office only to find it trashed by another modified human. This intruder was startled by Juzo's appearance. Juzo realized this was the criminal who had kidnapped the child on the street. He intended to call the police, but before he could, the police arrived, kicking in his door wanting to search the place. Juzo blocked them, refusing the search. The police, recognizing him by his head, explained they were there to capture a modified human. Juzo denied the presence of any modified humans. The police threatened to revoke his license for excessive modification, hinting his life could be at risk. Juzo responded that if he could not live, he would take someone with him before dying. The police left and later surrounded the building. The modified human asked Juzo why he saved him. Juzo simply disliked the police's arrogance. The kidnapper then released the child, offering to distract the police while entrusting Juzo to hide the child safely. Juzo's office was set up for such tasks, as long as there was money to be made. Thus, the modified human lured all the police away. Juzo contacted a friend to find a hiding place, but someone else arrived first. It was the nun who had lost a child earlier. She identified the child as Tetsuro, missing from their orphanage. Juzo didn't understand why a nun would come to such a chaotic place, claiming to care for the child, yet the child's legs bore multiple wounds, clearly to prevent escape. No ordinary person would remain so calm upon seeing his revolver head. Seeing Juzo resist, the nun stopped talking and prepared to leave him for dead. Juzo questioned if she was not afraid of killing the child she was looking for. She replied that it didn't matter as long as vital parts weren't hit. Juzo threw a smoke grenade, blocking her view and escaping behind a wall. The nun's shooting was precise, aided by her modified bionic eyes. As she taunted Juzo for not coming out, saying his headgun was useless without someone else firing it, Juzo could not bear the woman's insults and stepped out. Suddenly, the modified human from before jumped behind the nun, restraining her, and urged Juzo to run away with the child. The nun fired her bionic eyes at the ceiling, and a rebounding bullet hit his auxiliary brain, instantly disabling his core functions. She shot him in the brain, but just in time, Juzo grabbed his arm. Now, vulnerable in front of the nun, Juzo, to ensure the survival of his charge, set the boy down and temporarily let the nun take him. They fell into a sewer. Juzo survived, but the water in the cartridge made him uncomfortable. He realized the modified human was dying. Juzo took this chance to ask about their grudge. The modified human explained that the nun ran an orphanage, collecting children under its name and then sending them to Berurin Corporation to be used as experimental rats. The boy had a chip implanted in him for remote controlling modified humans, meaning the dying modified human was actually the boy, Tetsuro. During control, the body was mostly numb, but could still feel slight vibrations from vehicles. He had been mutilated and muted by the company. Yesterday, he seized control of this body, escaped with his original body, but was mistaken by the police as a kidnapper. Although he escaped, his body was recaptured, meaning he would continue to suffer inhumane treatment as a lab rat. Before he could finish, the body malfunctioned and died. However, Juzo had already taken on the mission to protect the boy. Even if recaptured, he had to be retrieved. Thus, Juzo arrived at the railway tracks, activating his enhanced steel fists. Numerous guards retaliated, but they were no match for this grim reaper of the battlefield, and were quickly subdued. Juzo opened the train door and confronted the woman again. Unaware of the formidable opponent she faced, Juzo didn't bother dodging the bullets, which he had previously avoided only to protect Tetsuro. He walked up to Tetsuro, calling him to act on his will, as he had told him. Responding to Juzo's call, Tetsuro started moving, using the remote control in his mouth to manipulate a nearby worker. Seeing signs of life in Tetsuro, Juzo was relieved and easily defeated the woman. He removed the shackles from Tetsuro, completing the rescue mission. One moment she was a pitiful little girl. The next, she transformed into a spider-like cyborg. She then crazily fired with the machine gun on her tail, killing the person who had just saved her. She immediately lost control, crashing around inside a building. There are many such modified humans, all experimental subjects of Baruren Corporation. Recently, a boy named Tetsuro was rescued from the company by Juzo. To prevent Tetsuro's escape, Baruren severed his limb's tendons and cut off his vocal cords. After an examination by the engineer Mary, it was discovered that a chip for remotely controlling cyborgs had been implanted in him. This chip allows hacking into and controlling the cyborg's auxiliary brains. While the chip caused significant damage to Tetsuro's body, it could not be removed and had to be left in place. By the next day, Tetsuro was able to move around because Mary had fitted him with prosthetic limbs. He would need more time to move freely. Soon, local gang members approached. They were not looking for trouble, but wanted Juzo's help to eliminate a cyborg. Recently, there had been many attacks targeting children in the area, with their prosthetic limbs being torn off. All the gang's scouts sent to investigate were killed. The affected children were unconscious and unaware of their condition, so the gang hoped Juzo would eliminate the perpetrator. In return, they offered to help ease the tension between Juzo and Baruren Corporation. Juzo was tempted by the offer, but told them to manage their own territory. Frustrated, a gangster pulled a gun in threat, but the boss wanted him to understand his own status. Ultimately, there was no conflict, as they realized they couldn't manage their own turf, let alone be the boss. Juzo suspected Baruren Corporation was behind this, aiming to lure out Tetsuro. Suddenly, a crashing sound was heard. It was Tetsuro, who had become agitated upon hearing the news. He felt he couldn't ignore the situation as it started because of him. Juzo pointed out that Tetsuro couldn't even stand on his own and had no choice but to remain passive. Tetsuro, controlling a robotic head on the ground, asked if he couldn't even dream of saving other children. He proposed to hire Juzo under a work contract, offering his remote control chip as payment. However, Mary explained that the chip was implanted next to his spine and was difficult to remove, so Juzo couldn't accept the commission. Tetsuro then used the control chip inside him to start hacking into Juzo. As Tetsuro lost consciousness, he took control of Juzo. He then carried his own body away in a large bag to protect it and prevent Mary from forcibly disconnecting him. He went to a cybernetic parts store to inquire about the children, but the owner eyed his head. Juzo's body, however, was not to be underestimated. A simple run sent them sprawling. After a long chase, he managed to lose them and found Juzo's body difficult to control, likely due to its unique structure. To avoid drawing attention, he covered his head with a bag, which still allowed him to see his surroundings clearly. While passing through an alley, he saw two girls running away, hiding from a deranged cyborg. Tetsuro thought this was the fiend who had been tearing off children's limbs. When the attacker moved to strike, Tetsuro waved his hand, and the assailant disappeared, only to realize he had accidentally killed him. It seemed Juzo's body was extremely powerful. At that moment, the two girls discussed killing Tetsuro. The seemingly pitiful girls suddenly sprouted steel prosthetics, transforming into a spider-like form. Tetsuro then realized they were the real culprits attacking the other children. He didn't want to fight them and asked if they were test subjects for Baruren Corporation. The girls were surprised he knew about it. Tetsuro explained he had also been rescued from there and could now help them escape. The girls were baffled, wondering how an adult male could be a test subject from Baruren, which felt like home to them. They knew nowhere else and decided to eliminate Tetsuro. At the moment they struck, Tetsuro's arm involuntarily blocked the bullet, but it was poisoned, and he collapsed. The spider girl then lost control, rampaging through the building until her sister calmed her down, returning her to human form. When they sought treatment from Baruren's executives, they were rebuffed. The executives argued there was no treatment without mission completion, dismissing them as failures unworthy of the company's resources. They ordered their subordinates to dispose of the two failures. Just as they were about to be destroyed, Tetsuro suddenly appeared. The company staff immediately attacked, shattering his head cover. The boss was shocked to see it was Juzo, unaware that Tetsuro was now controlling him. Seeing Juzo brought in by the girls pleased the boss, who then ordered their release and instructed the girls to kill Juzo to make amends. Seeing this, the girl decided to repay kindness with hatred and transformed into Spider-Girl, intent on killing Tetsuro. Tetsuro then said, "This can't truly be what you want. Stop now and join me." However, having been enslaved by the company, the two girls couldn't even imagine a life of freedom, and even with the opportunity right in front of them, chose to destroy it by attacking Tetsuro, causing his physical body to fall. The boss realized the situation and understood that Juzo was weakened because Tetsuro controlled him. Tetsuro then realized how naive he had been, thinking that controlling Juzo's body would save his fellows, only to end up harming Juzo instead. Still, he remained determined to save his brethren. His words moved the girl, who began to hesitate about killing Tetsuro. Seeing this, the boss shot Spider-Girl with a bullet that caused excitement, making her completely lose control until her auxiliary brain burned out, and she died. The shockwave caused Tetsuro to lose control over Juzo, and the impacted girl died from internal injuries. With his frail body, Tetsuro's only option to combat Spider-Girl was to control her. But having controlled for too long earlier, his chip was now low on energy. He attempted to control one of her legs and used it to damage her auxiliary brain. He succeeded in hitting it once, but just before the final strike, his own auxiliary brain overheated and failed. Now unable to even stand, Tetsuro watched as Spider-Girl's emotions collapsed. She needed her deceased sister to calm her as before. Without comfort, Spider-Girl ultimately lost control completely. At a critical moment, Juzo woke up. He grabbed Spider-Girl and threw her out, then dragged Tetsuro towards the elevator. He planned to send Tetsuro away while staying behind to hold off Spider-Girl. However, she quickly returned. As they tried to close the door, they found it wouldn't shut because Tetsuro refused to escape alone. Before they could hesitate further, Spider-Girl attacked. In the final moments, they both entered the elevator. But Spider-Girl relentlessly pursued them, sliding down the elevator shaft. Juzo, now severely injured and unable to fight, crouched down and instructed Tetsuro to pull the trigger on his head. This was the only way to defeat her. Soon, Spider-Girl broke into the elevator, and Tetsuro stood behind Juzo and pulled the trigger. They only managed to destroy Spider-Girl's prosthetic limbs. Afterwards, they took her home where Mary fitted her with normal arms, turning her into a normal person. Later, Juzo went to a barber shop to clean up his head, but agents from the government's EMS division appeared and immediately arrested him because the shot he had fired was illegal. Soon after, Juzo's friends arrived and were also arrested. It was later revealed that Juzo had orchestrated everything to protect his friends from being captured by the Baruran Corporation. In return, he had to assist the head of the EMS division by capturing an escaped prisoner. The prisoner was a top assassin, beyond the capabilities of ordinary people. At that moment, the transport vehicle behind them was suddenly flipped over by another escaped prisoner. The prison guards fired at him, accidentally knocking off the restraints that limited the prisoner's abilities, thus freeing his powers. Juzo's friends were also knocked unconscious. As the prisoner was about to attack them, Juzo couldn't stay calm any longer. He easily broke free from his handcuffs and was about to rescue his friends when the prisoner suddenly couldn't move. It turned out that many needles had been inserted into his back by Cronin from EMS, who appeared just in time. Using his own body, which had been modified, Cronin easily subdued the prisoner. However, he was reluctant to work with Juzo, as Juzo was also illegally modified. Despite this, they eventually went together to a venue to capture the most dangerous prisoner in history. Based on the clues, the prisoner's next assassination target was a hero. So they went to the location where the hero was expected to appear. There, Juzo saw a girl being knocked down. He went over to help her up, unaware that this seemingly harmless girl had murderous intentions. Amid the excited cheers of fans, the hero who led the nation to victory in war made his appearance. He was the foremost figure in full-body prosthesis, greatly contributing to its development. He had a revolver arm like Juzo, with a fist powerful enough to create tornadoes. As the hero was about to leave, a girl approached to give him a bouquet of flowers. Normally, this wouldn't be allowed, but the hero accepted them to maintain his approachable image. Just then, an assassin burst from the crowd. In the nick of time, Juzo threw a rope and tied him up. The hero then took the girl and fled the scene. Upon closer inspection, the assassin was the most dangerous escaped prisoner, Suddenly, he broke free from the rope and confronted Juzo for a fight to the death. Unexpectedly, Cronin attacked Juzo with a needle in the neck, seeking to take credit alone. It turned out the man was just a decoy to distract attention, and the girl the hero had taken with him was the real most dangerous prisoner. The hero praised the girl for her bravery and composure in such a situation. His bodyguard advised him to be more cautious, but the next second he was killed by tentacles that had replaced the girl's legs. The prisoner vanished suddenly, and as the hero wondered where he was, the prisoner emerged from a wall behind him, ready to kill the hero in one strike. However, he was interrupted by a needle strike as Cronin and Juzo arrived just in time. Seeing the situation turn against him, the prisoner ejected the needles from his face and disappeared again. The prisoner and the hero were once comrades in arms. The prisoner was a cyborg, specialized in assassination, with a face that could change like a display screen. This ability ensured he never failed an assassination, but also gave him a weakness. His auxiliary brain tended to overheat. Juzo questioned Cronin on why the prisoner could still escape despite being injected with needles. It turned out that the prisoner was an old model cyborg with a built-in auxiliary brain, making it hard to hit his vital parts. At that moment, Cronin received a message that the EMS director had been dismissed. As an EMS operative, he no longer had a reason to continue the search and left the scene early. Just after Cronin left, the prisoner emerged from Juzo's body. However, Juzo was not seriously injured and prepared to confront the prisoner. The prisoner decided to kill Juzo first, and they immediately started fighting. The prisoner attacked wildly with tentacles, but Juzo broke through his shield with a punch and intensified his attacks, finally hitting the prisoner. Juzo launched a heavy strike, breaking the prisoner's shield again and using his strategy successfully. By engaging the prisoner in a battle of endurance, he exploited the auxiliary brain's tendency to overheat. Soon, the prisoner couldn't keep up as his overheated brain slowed him down, forcing him to flee slowly. Juzo didn't pursue him, knowing Cronin wouldn't leave easily. As the prisoner used his last bit of energy to escape, Cronin was already waiting on the escape route. He shot a needle into the prisoner's overheated brain, disabling his ability to run. Just as they were about to take the prisoner back for interrogation, he regained consciousness. Cronin used a sedative to calm him down. The prisoner seemed to have secrets to reveal, but passed out under the sedative's effect. They planned to interrogate him after treatment back at the office. However, the hero was not satisfied and began loading bullets into his revolver. It turned out the prisoner knew secrets about him, and to prevent exposure, he might have to kill to keep them hidden. The man with a pistol on his head is a powerful weapon on the battlefield, instantly changing the tide of battle. The souls under his gun number in the thousands. A light pull of the trigger can unleash a devastating ray. However, without a controller, he cannot fully utilize his strength. Fighting against a senior cyborg, he was severely injured, and the cigarette meant to prevent him from going berserk was destroyed. Juzo's condition worsened, and he was pinned against a wall by the hero, unable to resist and soon choked unconscious. Thinking Juzo was dead, the hero prepared to kill the prisoner who knew his secrets. But in the next moment, Juzo activated his self-repair program and entered an uncontrollable berserk state. The system requested to initiate combat protocols, but without a controller, no one would approve. The hero laughed, remarking how useless such a powerful weapon was without a controller. His attack, however, triggered Juzo's counterattack program. The hero unleashed a barrage of gunfire at Juzo, sending hundreds of bullets through him and momentarily disabling him. The hero, armed to the teeth, was indeed worthy of his title. He attacked again, but Juzo easily blocked and retaliated. Even without a controller, the berserk Juzo was terrifying. The hero threw bombs, dozens of which exploded around Juzo, and seized the chance to escape. As he was about to kill the prisoner who knew his secrets, the EMS director arrived and overheard the hero inadvertently revealing his secrets. The hero had previously killed the director's father for his own benefit. As he was about to eliminate this meddlesome person, the berserk Juzo chased after him, followed by soldiers remotely controlled by Tetsuro. Juzo attacked the hero and pinned him to the ground, but his final punch missed, not because Juzo regained his senses, but because his auxiliary brain overheated and crashed. The director lit a cigarette and blew smoke into Juzo's mouth. As the hero approached with a steel pipe, intending to kill the director, Juzo blocked the pipe with his hand. The hero then pulled out a machine gun, but Juzo stabbed him with the steel pipe. Firing the gun, the hero inadvertently injured himself. Before they could recover, EMS's robotic soldiers moved to arrest the brawlers. The director opened a can of sardines, which the soldiers mistook for a gas leak, prompting them to retreat immediately. Tetsuro then carried Juzo away from the scene. Later, as the director was escorting the hero to court for trial, a mysterious person killed the hero to silence him. The cyborg Colt collapsed on the street but was fortunately found by engineer Mary, who took him to a clinic for treatment. Colt, a heavily modified cyborg, needs continuous medication to stay healthy. His extreme modifications were done to earn money to feed his two younger sisters. When he woke up, he mentioned that he would soon receive a large sum of money, enough to cover his medical bills. Mary asked if it was due to his mother's worsening condition. It was then revealed that his mother had participated in a prosthetic trial with Berurin Corporation, hoping to use a free prosthetic. However, the prosthetic worsened her condition. Although compensation was promised for a failed trial, Berurin refused to pay, protected by their collusion with the government. Colt mentioned he had a job lined up that could significantly improve their lives. After explaining, he left but secretly took a box of medicine to prevent fainting. Tetsuro noticed the theft and chased after him. Colt started to flee, but Tetsuro remotely controlled him, causing him to fall. Tetsuro quickly reached him, but Colt struck him in the face. Praising Tetsuro's remote control abilities, Colt tried to recruit him for a mission, but refused to disclose the details, only leaving a time and place before departing. Colt returned home with a lavish dinner for his siblings, telling them that if the mission succeeded, they could eat like this every day. If not, it might be their last meal. Watching his siblings and his bedridden mother, Colt's resolve to take the risk strengthened. The next day, Colt's action took place at the site of a hero's memorial service. Tetsuro and Mary hid in a nearby trash can to monitor the situation. It turned out that the medicine Colt took the day before was intentionally placed by Mary, containing a tracker to locate him. Unfortunately, Tetsuro unknowingly took it back. They climbed out of the trash can to check the surroundings, but were immediately spotted by a patrol robot. However, an explosion diverted the robot's attention. Tetsuro seized the moment to take control of the robot. Soon, he had commandeered it. Looking towards the source of the explosion, he realized it was Colt's doing. Due to the explosion, leaders began boarding a train to leave the scene. Tetsuro and Mary secretly observed from above. Suddenly, a gun was pressed against the robot's head. It turned out Colt thought the robot had captured them. When the robot spoke, they realized it was under Tetsuro's control. Colt's mission was to assassinate the leadership of the Berurin Corporation. He had already planted bombs on the train, ready to be detonated remotely. However, Tetsuro disagreed with the plan, arguing that killing for money was wrong. But Colt, needing to support his family, insisted on seizing this opportunity. As they argued, security personnel spotted them and shot the remote control, damaging it. With no other choice, Colt ran to the train to manually detonate the bombs. Tetsuro, controlling the robot, followed him. Just then, the head of security approached them. At this point, Tetsuro had no choice but to help Colt complete the mission. Colt jumped to activate the bomb, while Tetsuro held the security chief to restrain him. Soon, Colt reached the bomb, opened the switch, and started the countdown for detonation. However, Tetsuro was taken down by the security chief, and Colt was captured by other soldiers. Colt was initially happy because the bomb was activated and his family would receive the money once the explosion occurred. But the security chief's words drove him to despair. They had anticipated this possibility. The carriages the leaders entered did not leave with the train, but stayed at the station. The train carried citizens protesting against the Berurin Corporation and some expendable children. If you kill them, your organization will be labeled as a terrorist group, the chief said. He then detached the carriage with the bomb and civilians. Colte struggled to break free and rushed towards the front carriage. He grabbed the bomb and threw it at the enemy, but his body weakened from not taking his medicine. Seeing this, Tetsuro exerted full control over the robot and, with immense force, jumped next to Colte to pick up the bomb. He ultimately threw the bomb into the air, detonating it, and then jumped into the water with Colte to escape. After they escaped, Tetsuro suffered burns from the overheating chip, while the severely injured Colte suddenly seemed unaffected. He thanked Tetsuro for saving the innocent people and asked Tetsuro to control his body to take him home, as he was too weak to do so himself. They made their way back to Colt's home. Despite their great efforts, they were unable to improve the lives of Colt's family, leaving this world with regrets. The man with a revolver for a head is named Juzo. He runs an office specializing in matters concerning cyborgs. One day, he received a case about a family involved in a car accident. Both parents died and their daughter lost a leg. Since then, she has claimed that there are ghosts in their house. So Juzo was asked to come and protect the girl. Danny, a colleague of the girl's father, said he saw the ghost a few days earlier, but it escaped through a window. When they arrived at the girl's room, she was already hiding under the bed in fear. After Juzo left the room, he suddenly saw two blue lights flying towards the first floor. Juzo quickly followed them downstairs, but then lost sight of them. The two blue lights appeared again behind him, turning into a pair of cyborg hands. Juzo easily grabbed the attacking hands. These were physical entities, not ghosts. Before Juzo could figure out what was happening with the hands, Danny hurriedly tried to take the girl away. But as Danny was about to leave, Juzo stopped him because there was something suspicious about him. The mechanical hands rested on Juzo's shoulders, ready to expose Danny's lies. Juzo, following a prompt from the mechanical hands, picked up a photo frame and shouted at it, nearly deafening Danny. Upon opening the frame, they discovered a listening device installed by Danny. Danny quickly claimed it was for the girl's safety, but his explanation was full of holes. Despite the girl's family being wealthy, he had not arranged for bodyguards, which was suspicious. Juzo then demanded Danny to put the girl down. Unfortunately, the girl, having a prejudice against cyborgs, did not believe Juzo's explanation, so Danny successfully took the girl away. Juzo couldn't forcefully stop him. Danny immediately drove off with the girl, but she suddenly came to her senses. Danny then realized that what he had been searching for was hanging around the girl's neck, a secret document about the prosthetics company Berurin. Revealing its contents could destroy the company. Although the girl disliked cyborgs, she was aware of the importance of the document and questioned why, if it was so crucial, her father's colleague hadn't given it to her. Danny abruptly hit the brakes, causing the girl, who had only one leg, to fall and seize the opportunity to grab his pistol. His true intent was to sell the secrets for money. The mechanical hands at home had actually been secretly protecting the girl. He then attempted to kill the girl to eliminate any loose ends, but just in time, a mechanical hand blocked the bullet. Juzo, riding a motorcycle, managed to catch up to them, guided by another mechanical hand. Just then, two trains appeared ahead, and they decided to rush through the middle. Juzo then fired a smoke grenade to block Danny's view and successfully forced him to stop. 10 years ago, he was a warm and caring brother, relying solely on his sister Mary for support. 10 years later, they reunited, but he had become a notorious serial killer known as the dismantler, responsible for thousands of deaths. Recently, Juzo obtained a confidential document in a case. The document was so significant that it could lead to the destruction of all cyborgs worldwide. As soon as the news spread, various powers began to vie for it. While Mary was at the office, a flashbang flew in through the window. Soon after, the door was kicked open. Mary quickly hid in a room with a friend. Several armed individuals entered, searching for the confidential document. The sound of Mary closing the door was heard. They were trapped. The landlord wondered why the EMS officers outside didn't intervene. The intruders started to turn the doorknob, but were knocked out by an electric shock from a device Mary had installed earlier to prevent such incidents. Seizing the moment, they ran out, only to find more enemies outside. Hesitating, they saw the landlord get captured. Mary and Tetsuro tried to escape via another route, but Tetsuro wanted to go back for the landlord. Mary argued that they were unarmed and could not save him, nor could they hack and control without being cyborgs. They would only get caught. Just then, they saw the EMS officers who had already been killed by the intruders. Tetsuro wanted to control them to save the landlord, but Mary disagreed. Controlling the cyborgs could fatally harm Tetsuro as well. Despite the risks, Tetsuro insisted on trying. As he began to take control, Mary stepped in front to stop him, acting like his doctor, unwilling to let her patient die before her eyes. Tetsuro had no choice but to go back alone, but he was quickly captured. The attackers turned out to be an anti-cyborg resistance organization, aiming to obtain the secret document to completely destroy all cyborgs worldwide. Before the landlord could finish speaking, he was knocked out with a punch. Consequently, both he and another person were taken hostage to force the exchange of the secret document. Meanwhile, Mary watched everything from the rooftop. Suddenly, a mechanical hand directed her to a location. Unsure of what was happening but sensing something was amiss, she followed. Around the corner, she unexpectedly encountered her long-lost brother, who quickly left after saying a few words. Later, Mary found Juzo at a bar. The head of the EMS agency approached them, explaining that although Mary's brother was a cyborg, he was working for the anti-cyborg organization, responsible for numerous terrorist attacks. His ability to easily dismantle cyborgs earned him the nickname the Dismantler. Recently, he had brought a troop to this area. They came to apologize for Mary encountering such a dangerous person. Juzo dismissed their apology as insincere, saying it had nothing to do with them. The agency head then revealed his true intentions. While claiming to apologize, he was actually after the secret document. He mocked Juzo for his calmness, despite his friend being captured. Juzo tensed his muscles in warning. The agency head was not someone to provoke. After leaving his business card, he ordered his subordinates to keep an eye on Mary. Mary recalled her brother Victor. They were adopted by a mechanic in their childhood, and initially had a good relationship. However, Victor's interest in cyborg technology led to a strained relationship with their foster father, who later became an alcoholic and often physically abused Mary. Victor always stepped in to protect her until he couldn't bear it any longer and killed their foster father. He then vanished, leaving Mary behind, and only sent one letter over 10 years, saying he had become an army engineer. Before she could finish, an advertising billboard suddenly fell from the sky. It was the resistance fighters coming for the secret document. Juzo threw aside the billboard and confronted them. A muscular man attacked, but Juzo easily dodged and punched him, causing no damage due to armor 3 times thicker than a typical cyborg's. Defeating him seemed too difficult. Losing patience with his boasting, Juzo knocked him down with a series of sprint punches, then grabbed another man to ask about the hostages. The man stubbornly refused to talk, so Juzo strangled him and discarded him like trash. Juzo then decided to take Mary to find her brother Victor, who was Juzo's first client and had once entrusted him to protect Mary. Ironically, Victor was now sending people to kidnap her. Juzo wanted to confront him for an explanation. As they were about to leave, the mechanical hand approached them again, annoying Juzo, who demanded to know who was controlling it. Suddenly, it made a handgun gesture, reminding Juzo of a signal agreed upon with Victor when they were in the army. If it ever got too painful, make this gesture. Guessing it meant to lead them to Victor, they followed. Soon they arrived at an abandoned factory. Juzo told Mary to wait outside because he needed to settle things with Victor. He walked inside alone and kicked open the main door. Inside, he found many headless mechs. Victor soon appeared. A deranged man, responsible for thousands of deaths, was catching up with an old friend when the wall suddenly exploded. The police arrived with armed robots, aiming to arrest the serial killer. The robots swarmed in, hoping to use their numbers to apprehend him, but Juzo knocked down those that approached. The police, not easily deterred, intended to arrest anyone interfering with their duties. The chief had just ordered the arrest when Victor decided to stop the police's recklessness. In an instant, he destroyed all the robots. Victor's sister Mary, whom he hadn't seen in 10 years, suddenly entered. Without any sentimentality, he immediately detained her. However, his intention wasn't to kill his sister, but to understand the internal mechanics of Juzo, a superweapon. Juzo agreed to be dissected, but only if his sister was released first. Victor refused, wanting to see Juzo push to his limits. He knew Juzo's character well. Only when his loved ones were threatened would he reveal his full capabilities. This was why he had tasked Juzo with protecting Mary 10 years ago to bring out his best in a fight against him today. With everything out in the open, Juzo no longer held back, preparing to fight with all his might. Victor shot chains towards Juzo, who dodged swiftly and closed the distance. Suddenly, the headless robots around them attacked. These were Victor's marionettes, capable of attacking at will. But these simple robots couldn't stop Juzo, who easily overcame them. Victor, realizing the inadequacy of his tools, then touched Juzo's chest, instantly creating a large hole. Juzo had never seen such a technique before, and now understood why Victor was called the dismantler. Any regular cyborg would have been shattered by such a touch, but Juzo withstood it. Immediately after, Juzo was seized by several robots. Victor inserted his hand into Juzo's chest again. Severely injured, Juzo automatically activated his combat mode and forcefully tore at the robotic arms to attack Victor. However, due to the internal damage, his blows missed. Seeing that Juzo had not yet reached his limits, Victor reopened his old wounds and slowly recalled their experiences of slaughtering fellow soldiers on the battlefield. Then, he pulled the wires out of Juzo's stomach, making him experience the slow drain of life. Watching from the wall, his sister Mary couldn't believe that this was the brother who had once been her closest ally in childhood. The bomb blasted the robot's restraints, freeing Juzo. He seized the opportunity to break one of Victor's hands, but the next second, his only remaining hand was also broken. It turned out Juzo had sacrificed his hand deliberately, then bit Victor to disable his attack capability. Mary, having loaded her gun from behind, was now ready to kill her monstrous brother. Victor's body instantly lost its lower half. He had underestimated the former battlefield Reaper. Although Mary was heartbroken, she had to accept the reality of her brother's death. But the next second, the robotic hand that had followed them began to speak. It turned out to have connected to other robots' vocal systems. Juzo asked who was manipulating everything behind the scenes, only to learn that it was Mary's brother remotely controlling the robotic hand. The one who had just died was merely a puppet. The story began when Victor was an engineer in the army. His research into prosthetic technology directly influenced the course of battles. To reduce casualties, he began developing remotely operated robots. A single auxiliary brain wasn't sufficient for the task, so he implemented a dual auxiliary brain design. After completing the design, he deployed the remote control technology on the battlefield. However, sharing the robot's vision, he was horrified by the sight of widespread carnage as his robots, having gone rogue, slaughtered allies as well. Eventually, his own controlled robots were destroyed. When he disconnected, he found the lab on fire, his colleagues killed, and himself transformed into another person. This was due to the mental shock from witnessing the battlefield, causing the auxiliary brain to assume control, believing itself to be the master, and mimicking the master's original behaviors. Because the auxiliary brain felt the master's regret over his creations, it stubbornly believed that prosthetic technology should not exist and decided to eliminate all modified humans. Only this mechanical hand was being remotely controlled by his true self. Therefore, Victor asked Juzo to help find his real body and destroy the controlling auxiliary brain. After explaining this, the mechanical hand broke down due to combat damage. Juzo was suddenly shot and fell again. The chief came out to uphold justice once more. The robot emerged from a box. It was the spare body of a deceased enemy, but considerably weaker in strength. Fearing an attack, the chief took his sister hostage to force the brother to reveal the location of his real body. The chief shot the sister in the foot to intimidate them further. His boldness stemmed not only from holding a hostage, but also from an electric current sensor installed in his body. Even with his eyes closed, he could detect the positions of the two modified humans. Juzo is an unusual person. He might not react even under severe injury, but he cannot tolerate his friends being mistreated. The room was filled with smoke, obscuring visibility. When the chief activated the electric current sensor, he only detected prosthetic fragments in the air, making it impossible to pinpoint locations. The next second, the hostage disappeared from his grasp. It was the mechanical hand that had rescued the sister. The chief tried to shoot, but Juzo stopped him. The fragments that had disrupted the current were from Victor, who had destroyed his own hand. After dealing with the chief, the robotic police under the chief's command arrived. Juzo then dragged the chief outside to surrender, buying time for the siblings. The man with a revolver for a head is named Juzo. Recently, a woman visited his office. She once had a loving husband who later died in combat after joining the military. Distraught, she went to the river to end her life, but was saved by a man named Edmund, who became her new husband. Coincidentally, her new husband had served in the same unit as her late husband. Both were injured while defusing bombs. Her first husband died instantly while Edmund survived. However, the woman felt an eerie familiarity with Edmund, as if he were her late husband. Recently, her husband began staying out late and even installed a new prosthetic arm. After kissing her and stating he had matters to resolve before returning to her, the woman suspected he was seeking revenge. She asked Juzo to help stop him. Juzo took the case and went to the intelligence service to gather information about him, only to find his access restricted. This restriction was similar to Juzo's situation, as they were both classified as military secrets from their pasts. Back at the office, a mechanical hand led Mary outside where she saw Edmund lying by the wall, but she was unaware of his story. Juzo had spent most of the day outside searching fruitlessly and returned to the office only to hear other voices. Upon opening the door, he found the person they were seeking right on his own turf, who had taken a month's supply of sedatives. When Edmund turned and saw Juzo, he asked to speak outside. Juzo informed him that his wife was looking for him, but Edmund spoke incoherently, as if harboring a grudge against Juzo. He suddenly swung a club in a fury. Unable to bear it any longer, Juzo punched a steel pipe, nearly melting it. Edmund warned Juzo not to harm his wife. Juzo suggested there might be a misunderstanding, but Edmund accused him of feigning ignorance and even called him partner, confusing Juzo further. Edmund claimed a beam he saw earlier was Juzo's provocation, and despite changing his appearance, he was still being pursued by Juzo. Declaring it was time to end this, Edmund activated a device on his hand to unleash his ultimate move when suddenly a child appeared. After a lightning strike, Juzo remained unharmed, and Edmund, surprisingly, held the child, protecting him. Astonished, Edmund noted, "You risked your life for a child. That doesn't seem like the five I know." At that moment, Tetsuro arrived with Edmund's wife. He explained that she had known all along that Juzo was the man her husband was seeking. Her commissioning Juzo was merely a ploy to draw him out. She had done this in hopes of resolving the matter quickly so her husband could return to her side sooner. The woman bluntly revealed that she knew her current husband was actually her former husband, given their similar behaviors and habits. Faced with this, Edmund admitted his true identity. Juzo then suggested that Edmund had hidden his identity to avoid his associate, Five. Seeing Juzo's familiarity with Five, Edmund asked about Five's whereabouts. The terrifying ray was fired by a man with a cannon on his head, known as number 13 of the gun slave units. There are 13 members in the gun slave units, strategic weapons on the battlefield that led their nation to victory in war with just 13 members. However, once the war was won, the first action the government took was to eliminate these heroes, deeming them too powerful and difficult to control. Orders were issued to disband them, but the gun slave units, being human, were unwilling to accept this fate, and some organized a breakout. Without their controllers, they couldn't harness their full power. To ensure their destruction, the government made a special modification to Unit 13 during its creation, intending to use it to kill the other 12 after the war. Several members were now trapped in a small town, and Juzo was set to execute the order to eliminate his former comrades. His controller pulled the trigger for the last time and then left early. Juzo entered the building alone to search for the other renegade members. Unexpectedly, Unit 12 had been waiting there for a long time, guarding the entrance to cover his comrades. He tried to persuade Juzo to escape together, but Juzo had no such intention, and 12 switched to combat mode. However, Juzo suddenly offered them an escape route that would bypass the military encirclement, then left. The defectors were unsure of the truth of his words, but preferred it to waiting for death, so they followed the direction he indicated. After a long time, they finally saw an exit. Thinking if they survived the day, they would consider it their rebirth and commemorate it annually. Once they emerged, they indeed had bypassed the military encirclement. Just as they were hopeful about their future, a bright light flashed from a distant bell tower. It was a trap set by Juzo. From that moment, Juzo lived every day in regret. An elderly man who had been in a wheelchair for decades suddenly stood up, his muscles bursting through his clothes. Beneath his suit was a prosthetic body that instantly transformed into a mechanical dog, intent on killing Tetsuro. Recently, Tetsuro had been kidnapped by a resistance organization, but instead of harming him, they helped repair damage to his internal devices. Their sole purpose was to have Tetsuro control Juzo and then eliminate Barucherin Corporation's Unit 7. If Tetsuro refused, they threatened to harm those close to him, leaving Tetsuro with no choice but to agree. Upon returning to his office, everything seemed fine, but he attempted to control Juzo whenever they were alone. Juzo was unsuspecting and eventually fell under Tetsuro's control. Tetsuro, controlling Juzo, approached the resistance organization. The elderly man was pleased with his actions and promised not to harm Tetsuro's associates. He then wheeled over a chair for Tetsuro's physical body and pressed a switch to activate Tetsuro's control chip, confirming it was operational. The elderly man openly revealed that the purpose of repairing the chip was to add a locking feature that couldn't be disabled without his permission. To defeat Unit 7, Tetsuro had to hack into and disable Juzo's restrictions. The elderly man summoned a group to enforce this, but Tetsuro, unwilling to comply, controlled Juzo to escape the encirclement. Seeing that Tetsuro was difficult to handle, the elderly man sent his bodyguard to deal with the situation. After the bodyguard left, only Tetsuro and the elderly man were left. The next second, Tetsuro stood behind the old man, telling him not to move. The old man looked at the glowing control chip, puzzled as to why Tetsuro could move while controlling Juzo. It turned out he wasn't controlling Juzo, but his own prosthetic body. Meanwhile, Juzo was distracting the enemy forces as Tetsuro spoke one-on-one with the old man. He pushed the old man into a deserted corridor and demanded that he stop the organization's terrorist activities. The old man scoffed, saying it wasn't something he could decide alone. To stop the terror, the root issue was to correct Barucherin Corporation's course. However, with Unit 7 protected by Barucherin, Juzo had to be sacrificed to eliminate it. Tetsuro knew Barucherin was corrupt, but he didn't want to sacrifice those around him to achieve his goal. The old man felt further discussion was pointless and decided to remove Tetsuro's control chip. He freed his own prosthetic body, instantly transforming from an old man into an assassin, no longer needing the oxygen tube attached to him. Seeing this, Tetsuro immediately started running but was soon injured by a whip. Juzo, unaware of this, continued to delay the old man's men. Tetsuro quickly became too weak to run due to his injuries. Just as the old man was about to end his life, Tetsuro unleashed a powerful force. He used the chip to control his prosthetic body for defense, turning up the chip's power to its maximum. He even managed to burst the spikes directly. As the old man attacked again, Tetsuro took the opportunity to rush at him, defeating the old man by sacrificing himself. As the old man faced death, he still mocked, saying that sacrifices were necessary for these causes. However, Tetsuro disagreed. He had seen the old man's subordinates carry out terrorist attacks, yet they failed to accomplish their missions until death. Tetsuro believed that sacrifice did not necessarily lead to success. He spared the old man's life and walked away. But before he could get far, the old man was stabbed by others, and Tetsuro was captured. Meanwhile, Juzo encountered trouble. The old man's bodyguard, skilled in the pressure points of modified humans, filled Juzo's body with spikes, draining his strength. The bodyguard then shot a few soldiers, who unexpectedly stood up again with increased strength, breaking their armor. It turned out one of the soldiers was a woman. She teleported in front of Juzo, who narrowly avoided having his head split in two. At that moment, The bodyguard mentioned that the sponsor's job was probably done. It turned out he joined the resistance purely for profit. The terror attacks on modified humans were not deterring people from using prosthetics, but rather driving more to buy them from Berurin for self-defense. This meant the more terror attacks, the more money Berurin made. So, they were funding the terror attacks themselves. Hearing this, a soldier nearby angrily moved to kill the traitor. But in a second, her hand was severed by none other than Pepper, the controller of Unit 7. Following closely was the infamous top combat force of Berurin, Unit 7 itself, setting the stage for a battle of the century. One person has a huge mechanical arm, while another wields a giant handgun. In this anime, the two strongest combatants meet on a narrow path, and today, Mother Earth is destined for unrest. The reason for their life and death struggle dates back to just 10 minutes earlier. Juzo, while on a mission, encountered another of his kind, Seven. Seven's controller also took a liking to Juzo, hoping Juzo would join him. However, Seven, jealous, attacked to separate them and planned to teach Juzo a lesson. This punch severely injured Juzo. Juzo initially did not want to fight, but Pepper said if Juzo won, he would reveal the whereabouts of Juzo's controller. Fondly remembering his former comrades, Juzo unlocked his abilities, ready to seriously engage in the fight. Pepper slashes at Seven and activates his rear shooting device, then pulls the trigger to start combat mode. Juzo strikes first, punching a large hole through Seven's stomach. However, with a controller, Seven has an advantage over the solitary Juzo, who is slightly outmatched. Meanwhile, Tetsuro passes out, and just as the enemy tries to take him away, Cronin from the police department intervenes. Both skilled with needles and trained together, one now walks the path of darkness and the other of law. They are enemies upon this reunion. After an exchange of fire, the man runs out of bullets due to the earlier fight. He crouches in a corner, knowing he can only win by shooting at close range. As the standoff continues, the building collapses due to Juzo's battle, providing the man an opportunity to escape. Tetsuro suddenly wakes up and urges Cronin to rescue Juzo. By now, both gunmen are exhausted and smoky from the fight. As Juzo charges again, Seven gets serious, transforming his hands into giant handguns. A blast from his guns shears off Juzo's lower body. Without a controller, Juzo cannot unleash his potentially devastating energy beam, while Seven, at full combat strength, controls Juzo's fate. Pepper steps forward to invite Juzo to join her again, but he rejects her, determined to die rather than comply. Pepper regrets the situation. Suddenly needles fly, deflecting Seven's gun barrel. Cronin, dragging Tetsuro, has come to the rescue. Tetsuro becomes Juzo's only hope. His chip has been modified to directly hack into Juzo's auxiliary brain, triggering the weapon as a controller. Tetsuro activates his control chip and begins to hack into Juzo's auxiliary brain. Inside, he finds a worn revolver, Juzo's trigger. Pulling it will massively boost Juzo's combat power. Pepper thinks Juzo is already dead, and with Tetsuro's chip burnt out, she sees no point in wasting more time. However, their leader sends people to clean up the mess, as the incident might expose the company's secrets. They launch an indiscriminate attack on everyone present. Seven and Pepper find a safe spot to hide. When Pepper looks down at the crowd below and sees they are all watching her, she relishes the attention. To draw even more eyes, she orders Seven to destroy everything in sight. Seven jumps to the ground, determined to eliminate everyone present. Cronin fires a needle, but it's ineffective due to the distance. Inside Juzo's auxiliary brain, Tetsuro has Juzo pull the trigger himself, taking control of his own will, a sentiment echoed by his own controller. Instantly, Seven's hand is shot off. Juzo, now unleashing his full capabilities, has a mechanical arm larger than a human's. Juzo doesn't want to fight, but Seven, lacking such awareness and bound to obey his master's orders, insists on destroying everything around him. After setting Pepper down, he retrieves another hand from a backup box. The battle officially begins. A cannonball is fired, which Juzo easily deflects with his arm. 7 activates another hand to attack, but Juzo dodges effortlessly. In just a moment, 7 is reduced to half his size and kneels on the ground immobile. Suddenly, he opens his expansion box and equips a new pair of hands. It turns out he isn't looking to continue the fight but to entrust Pepper to Juzo. It was the company that came to capture him, and he said this to save his controller. He asked Juzo to protect Pepper and is then taken away by the company. However, 7 is not the real enemy. The true adversary is still Barurin Corporation behind the scenes. This concludes the content of No Gun's life through its 2 seasons. Given this ending, a 3rd season is likely expected. Stay tuned.